My family called me, a single mother, the disgrace of the family. At a Thanksgiving party, my dad yelled, "Get out of here, you scumbag." I just said, "Okay," and didn't argue at all. But they had no idea that the next day they would be living off my $20 million fortune. When I moved into my beach house, everything changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to that Thursday, the day they decided I wasn't family anymore. I pulled up to my father's house in my 12-year-old Honda. The paint was chipping near the rear wheel well. The muffler made that rattling sound it had been making for 6 months. I hadn't fixed it because I'd been saving money. Not for car repairs, for something else. The driveway was already packed. My brother's Mercedes, my sister's Lexus SUV, their spouses' cars, all gleaming and new. I parked on the street 2 houses down, walked back carrying a store-bought pie because I couldn't afford to make one from scratch this year. Or that's what they thought. The front door was unlocked. I walked in without knocking. That was still allowed back then. The noise hit me first. Laughter from the living room. Kids screaming in the backyard. The television playing football at a volume meant to compete with everything else. The smell of turkey and stuffing and that green bean casserole my father's wife always made with too much cream of mushroom soup. I set the pie on the kitchen counter between a homemade pecan pie and what looked like a 3-layer chocolate cake. My cheap plastic container looked exactly like what it was. An afterthought. Oh. My father's wife, Patricia, stood near the stove. She looked at the pie the way you'd look at a stain on the carpet. "You came? Happy Thanksgiving, Patricia." She turned back to the stove. "You can put your coat in the den." I kept my coat on. The house was cold anyway. My father kept the thermostat at 68 to save money, despite having a retirement account that could probably buy 3 houses like this one. I walked into the living room. My brother David sat in the recliner. The good one. He was 42, soft around the middle, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. His wife Melissa sat on the arm of the chair, wine glass in hand. She saw me first. "Oh my God," she said it loud enough that the room went quiet. "You actually showed up?" I didn't answer. I was watching my sister Jennifer on the couch. She was younger than me by 3 years, but you wouldn't know it from looking at her. Botox and fillers had frozen her face into permanent surprise. Her husband, Greg, sat next to her, scrolling through his phone. "Hey," I said. Jennifer looked at me like I'd just tracked mud across her white carpet. "We weren't sure you'd come, given everything." "Given what?" "Given that you're broke." David didn't look at me when he said it. He was watching the game. "Given that you're living in that shithole apartment with your kid. Given that you're basically embarrassing the whole family." I felt my jaw tighten, forced it to relax. "I brought pie." "Store-bought," Melissa said. She wasn't asking. She'd already checked. "Yeah. How thoughtful." Her voice dripped with something that wasn't gratitude. I stood there. Nobody offered me a seat. The couch had room. So did the love seat. But somehow every space was occupied by someone who didn't feel like moving. "Where's Emma?" Jennifer asked. My daughter, her niece. "With her father." "Oh, so he's actually in the picture now. It's his weekend." "How convenient." Jennifer sipped her wine. "Must be nice to pawn her off whenever you need a break." I counted to 5 in my head. Old habit. Count to 5, and the urge to respond usually passed. Not always, but usually. "I'm going to say hi to Dad," I said. "Good luck with that." David still hadn't looked at me. He's in a mood. I found my father in the den. He was 71 now, gray-haired and thick around the middle. He sat in his desk chair, looking at something on his computer. He didn't turn when I walked in. "Hi, Dad." "Meredith." He said my name like it tasted bad. "Happy Thanksgiving." "Is it?" He swiveled in his chair, looked at me over his reading glasses. "You bring any money to contribute to this meal, or are we feeding you for free again?" "I brought pie." Patricia told me, store-bought. "It's what I could afford." "Right." He turned back to his computer. "Everything's what you can afford now. Can't afford a decent car, can't afford a decent place to live, can't afford to contribute to family gatherings, but you can afford to keep making excuses." I didn't answer. There was no answer that would satisfy him. "You know what your problem is?" He didn't wait for me to respond. "You're weak. You always have been. No backbone, no drive. You had every opportunity we gave you, and you squandered it, and now look at you." I looked down at myself. Jeans from Target. A sweater that was 2 years old. Boots I'd resoled twice. I looked exactly like someone who'd been careful with money for a very specific reason. I'm doing fine, I said. You're 45 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment, working part-time at a job that pays barely above minimum wage. That's not fine. That's pathetic. The word hung in the air between us. Dinner's in 30 minutes, he said. Try not to embarrass us more than you already have. I walked out. Back through the living room. David and Melissa were laughing about something. Jennifer was showing Greg something on her phone. None of them looked up. I went outside. The backyard was full of kids, my nephews and nieces. They were playing some game that involved a lot of running and screaming. I recognized most of them, some I hadn't seen in over a year. I sat on the back steps, pulled out my phone, checked my bank account. The number hadn't changed. It wouldn't change. Not until tomorrow, when the final wire transfer cleared. $20,347,612.18. The sale of my company, the one I'd built from nothing over the last 8 years. The one nobody in my family knew about because I'd kept it quiet. The one I'd operated under an LLC with a name that didn't connect to me. The one I'd just sold to a private equity firm 3 weeks ago. The logistics company. Crisis response, infrastructure coordination. The kind of work I'd learned in my 20s when I was in emergency management. Before I had Emma, before everything fell apart the first time. I'd rebuilt myself in silence. Let my family think I was barely surviving. Let them think I was the failure they wanted me to be. Tomorrow, the money would clear. Tomorrow, I'd disappear. But tonight, I had to get through dinner. Patricia called everyone inside. We gathered around the dining room table. 15 people squeezed in, kids at a separate card table in the corner. I ended up between my nephew Tyler and an empty chair that nobody wanted to sit in because it was next to me. My father stood at the head of the table, cleared his throat. Before we eat, he said, I want to say a few words. Everyone got quiet, even the kids. This family, my father said, has been built on hard work, on integrity, on people who show up and do what needs to be done. I'm grateful for every person at this table who embodies those values. He paused, looked directly at me. And I'm disappointed in those who don't. Jennifer coughed. It might have been a laugh. Dad? I said quietly. Let me finish. His voice was sharp. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of acting like everything's fine when we all know it's not. Meredith, you've been a drain on this family for years. You make bad decisions. You refuse help. You embarrass us in front of our friends and neighbors. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The room was silent. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. Maybe you don't belong here, he said. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not hurt, not anger. Something calmer than that. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying maybe you should leave. David shifted in his seat, but he didn't say anything. Jennifer studied her napkin. Greg looked at his phone. Melissa smiled into her wine glass. You want me to leave? I said. Not a question. I think it would be better for everyone. I stood up slowly, picked up my purse from where I'd set it on the floor. The whole table watched me. Okay, I said. That was it. No shouting, no tears, no defending myself. Just one word. Okay? My father looked surprised, like he'd expected a fight, like he'd wanted one. Okay, I repeated. I'll go. I walked to the front door, put my hand on the knob, turned back. They were all watching me from the dining room. Every single one of them, waiting to see if I'd break, if I'd cry, if I'd beg to stay. Happy Thanksgiving, I said. I walked out, got in my car, started the engine. The muffler rattled. I pulled away from the curb and drove. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't punch the steering wheel. I drove to the cheap motel I'd already booked for the night. The one I'd reserved 2 weeks ago because I'd known something like this would happen. Not the exact details, but the general shape of it. I checked in, paid cash. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The bedspread had a stain near the pillow. The TV was bolted to the dresser. But it was quiet, and it was mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my phone, opened my banking app one more time. The number stared back at me. More money than my father would see in 2 lifetimes. More money than David's fancy Mercedes and Jennifer's designer clothes and all their condescending bullshit combined. I'd done it in silence. Built something real while they thought I was falling apart. Sold it for a fortune while they planned how to humiliate me at Thanksgiving dinner. Tomorrow, the wire would clear. Tomorrow, I'd start moving pieces. But tonight, I needed to sit in this shitty motel room and feel nothing. Because nothing was exactly what I'd felt when my father told me to leave. Nothing was what I'd been building toward. Nothing was the space I'd need to work. I lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling, listened to a couple arguing in the next room, heard a door slam, heard footsteps in the hallway. My phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer. That was dramatic. You always have to make everything about you. I read it twice, didn't respond, set the phone face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow. Everything would change tomorrow. But tonight, I let them think they'd won. Let them sit around that table and talk about how I'd slunk away with my tail between my legs. Let them congratulate themselves on finally cutting off the dead weight. They never noticed I'd taken my coat, or that I hadn't taken anything else. Because I didn't need anything from them anymore. I'd stopped needing them the day I incorporated my LLC, the day I landed my first major contract, the day I realized I was building something they'd never understand because they'd never asked what I was doing with my life. They assumed I was failing, so I let them assume. People think silence means surrender. It usually just means planning. I closed my eyes. Thought about the beach house I'd already purchased under the LLC's name, the one on the coast, 3 states away, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the deck overlooking the ocean, the one I'd furnished last month with my final paycheck from the part-time job I'd kept just for appearances. The job I'd quit yesterday. Tomorrow, I'd drive there. Tomorrow, I'd watch the wire clear. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls. But tonight, I'd sleep in a motel that cost $49 a night, because the gap between what they thought I was and what I actually was, that gap was the weapon I'd spent 8 years sharpening, and I was finally ready to use it. I woke up at 5 in the morning. The motel room was dark except for the red glow of the alarm clock. Someone in the parking lot was revving their engine. I lay there for a moment, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, then reached for my phone. The wire had cleared. $20,347,612.18. I sat up, felt a strange lightness in my chest. Not joy, exactly. More like relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 8 years and could finally exhale. I showered in the motel bathroom. The water pressure was weak, and the temperature fluctuated between scalding and freezing. I dried off with a towel that felt like sandpaper. Got dressed in the same clothes from yesterday. Checked out at the front desk where a guy with half-closed eyes barely looked at me. The Honda started on the 3rd try. I pulled onto the highway as the sun was coming up. The drive to the coast would take 11 hours. I'd already mapped it. Already booked a storage unit halfway there where I'd left some things last week. I drove in silence. No music. No podcasts, just the sound of the engine and the road and my own thoughts. I thought about my father's face when he told me to leave, the casual cruelty of it, like he was taking out the trash, like I was something that had gone bad and needed to be removed. I thought about David in his recliner, not even looking at me, about Melissa's smirk, about Jennifer's Botoxed face and her casual insults, about how none of them had asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, if there was anything they could do to help. They'd decided who I was. And they'd been wrong. I stopped for gas around noon in a town I didn't recognize, filled up the tank, bought a coffee and a sandwich from the convenience store, ate in the car while watching a woman yell at her kid in the parking lot. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Dad feels bad about last night, but you know how you push his buttons. I stared at the message, read it 3 times, then deleted it without responding. The thing about being invisible is that people don't realize when you're studying them. They don't notice when you're cataloging their weaknesses, their dependencies, their secrets. I'd spent years being invisible to my family. Years of holiday dinners where they talked over me. Years of phone calls where they'd ask how I was doing and then interrupt my answer to talk about themselves. Years of being treated like a problem that wouldn't solve itself. And in those years, I'd learned things. I knew David's company was leveraged to the hilt, that he'd taken out loans to maintain his lifestyle, that his Mercedes was leased and his house had a second mortgage, that Melissa's shopping addiction was draining them faster than he was making money. I knew Jennifer's marriage was held together by social pressure and fear of judgment, that Greg was sleeping with someone from his office, that her Botox appointments cost more than most people's rent, that her entire life was a performance staged for Instagram. I knew my father had always valued appearance over substance, that his pride was fragile, that his greatest fear was being seen as a failure. I knew all of this because I'd paid attention while they'd ignored me, and now I was going to use it. I reached the storage unit around 3 in the afternoon, unlocked it. Inside was a stack of boxes I'd moved here over the past 2 months. Clothes, documents, personal items, the things I'd need for my new life, and one box that contained everything else. I opened it carefully. Inside were folders, each one labeled with a name: David, Jennifer, Greg, Melissa, my father. Inside each folder was documentation, bank statements I'd obtained through perfectly legal means, screenshots of social media posts, public records, emails that had been forwarded to me by accident and never deleted, text messages sent to the wrong number, conversations overheard at family gatherings, nothing illegal, nothing hacked, just information that nobody thought I'd be smart enough to keep. I'd been building these files for 3 years, since the day I realized they'd never see me as anything but a failure, since the day I decided that if they were going to treat me like nothing, I'd become something they couldn't ignore. I loaded the boxes into my car, locked the storage unit, got back on the highway. The sun was setting when I reached the coast. The ocean appeared suddenly, a dark line against the orange sky. I felt something shift in my chest, something that might have been hope if I'd still believed in that kind of thing. The beach house was exactly as I'd left it, 3 stories of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the water. I'd bought it 6 months ago, furnished it slowly, piece by piece, made sure nobody connected it to me. The LLC owned it. The utilities were in the LLC's name. The property taxes were paid through the LLC's account. As far as anyone knew, some anonymous company owned this house, not a broke single mother living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I parked in the garage, carried the boxes inside, set them in the office on the 2nd floor, the one with the view of the ocean. I stood at the window and watched the waves crash against the rocks below, felt the house settle around me, felt the silence that wasn't empty but full. This was mine, all of it, and they had no idea. I unpacked slowly, put my clothes in the master bedroom closet, set up my laptop on the desk in the office, made coffee in the kitchen with the expensive machine I'd bought last month. Then I sat down and opened the first folder. David. My brother had always been the golden child, the one who did everything right. Good grades, good job, good marriage. Or that's what everyone thought. The reality was different. David's company was a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in helping other companies downsize. He'd always described it as optimization and efficiency. What it really meant was firing people. He made good money, but not as much as he spent. The Mercedes was leased at $900 a month. The house had a mortgage of $4,000. Melissa's credit card bills averaged $6,000 a month. And they had 2 kids in private school at $30,000 a year each. He was drowning. But he couldn't let anyone know, because being the golden child meant never admitting weakness. I discovered all of this by accident 2 years ago. He'd sent me an email meant for his accountant, complaining about cash flow, about how tight things were, about how he might need to tap his retirement fund. He'd realized his mistake 10 minutes later and sent a follow-up email saying it was a joke, that everything was fine, that he'd been messing around. But I'd already saved the original, and I'd started paying attention. Public records showed the second mortgage. Social media showed Melissa's shopping habits. A mutual acquaintance mentioned that David's company had lost its biggest client 3 months ago. He was 1 bad quarter away from collapse, and he had no idea I knew. I opened my laptop, composed an email, sent it to the CEO of David's biggest remaining client. A simple, polite inquiry about whether they were happy with their current consulting firm, mentioning that I represented a logistics company that specialized in crisis response and might be able to offer a more comprehensive service. I didn't mention David, didn't mention his company, just planted a seed. 2 weeks later, I drove back to my father's town, not to his house, to a hotel 6 blocks away. I checked in under my real name, made sure I was visible, made sure I could be found. Then I waited. It took 3 hours. My father showed up first. I saw him through the lobby window, getting out of his car, walking toward the entrance with that stiff gait he'd developed after his knee surgery. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, more tired. I met him in the lobby, sat in one of those overstuffed chairs near the fake fireplace, waited for him to find me. He stopped when he saw me, stood there for a moment like he wasn't sure if I was real. Meredith. Dad. He sat down across from me, slowly, like his bones hurt. You came back. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know what to think. He looked at his hands. David lost his company. Did you know that? I heard. His partners forced him out. They're suing him for embezzlement. Melissa left him, took the kids. He's living in a motel. That sounds difficult. Difficult? He looked up. He's destroyed. His whole life is gone. Is it my fault? You know it is. Do I? I leaned forward. Or did David destroy himself by spending money he didn't have and stealing from his own business? You exposed him, yeah? You sent information to his partners. I sent them the truth. What they did with it was their choice. He shook his head. Jennifer's getting divorced. Greg moved out last week. She had to shut down her social media because everyone found out about the fake followers. That must be embarrassing for her. Why are you doing this? You keep asking me that, like you don't already know. Because we hurt you at Thanksgiving? Because I told you to leave? He spread his hands. Was that worth destroying your entire family? You destroyed the family, I said quietly. When you told me I didn't belong, when you removed me from your trust, when you made it clear that I was worthless to you, you did that, not me. So this is punishment. No, this is consequence. There's no difference. There is. Punishment is about making someone suffer. Consequence is about showing someone the truth. I stood up. You raised me to believe that family was everything, that loyalty mattered. And then you threw me away the moment I embarrassed you. You were struggling. You were broke. I was none of those things. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, showed him the number. I sold my company for $20 million. I own a house on the coast worth $3 million. I have investments that generate more income every month than you made in a year. He stared at the screen. That's not possible. Why? Because I'm too stupid? Too weak? Too pathetic? You were working part-time at a grocery store. I was maintaining cover, so you wouldn't ask questions, so you'd keep thinking I was failing. Why would you? He stopped, looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. How long have you been planning this? 3 years, since the day I realized you'd never see me as anything but a disappointment. That's not true, isn't it? I put the phone away. You told me I was weak. You told me I had no backbone. You told me I was a disgrace, and I let you believe it, because I knew that one day you'd push me too far, and when you did, I'd be ready. You're sick. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of being invisible. He stood up. His face was red. You've destroyed David's life. You've destroyed Jennifer's marriage. You've turned this whole family against each other. For what? To prove a point? To prove I'm not who you thought I was. Congratulations. You've proved it. He turned to leave, stopped, turned back. I hope you're happy. I hope whatever satisfaction you're getting from this is worth it. It's not about satisfaction, I said. It's about truth. You told me I didn't belong in this family, so I'm showing you what happens when you mean it. He left. I stood there in the lobby. Felt nothing. No triumph. No guilt. Just the cold certainty that this wasn't over yet. I went back to my room, ordered room service, ate alone while watching the city lights through the window. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Dad says you're in town. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Another text. From Jennifer. I know you're here. Face me, if you have the courage. I smiled at that. Typed a response. Starbucks on Market Street, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. She responded immediately. I'll be there. I set the phone down. Thought about tomorrow, about what I'd say, about how this would play out. Because this was the confrontation I'd been building toward. The moment when I'd face them directly, when I'd let them see who I really was and what I'd really done. But there was one more piece to put in place first. I called Claire. She answered on the second ring. Ms. Blake, I need something else. I figured you would. My father. I need everything. His finances, his investments, his debts, everything. That'll take time. I have 3 days. She was quiet for a moment. That's ambitious. Can you do it? For the right price, I can do anything. I gave her the number. She whistled softly. You're serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. 3 days, she said. I'll have it for you. She hung up. I lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling, thought about my father's face when he'd seen my bank account, the disbelief, the confusion, the slow dawning realization that he'd been wrong about me. That was just the beginning. Tomorrow, I'd face Jennifer. The day after, I'd face David. And 3 days from now, when Claire sent me the files on my father, I'd face him again, and this time, I wouldn't be the one leaving. The next morning, I arrived at the Starbucks 10 minutes early, ordered a coffee, sat at a table near the window, watched people walk by, normal people living normal lives, going to work, running errands, not dismantling their families piece by piece. Jennifer arrived exactly at 9. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing sweatpants and a jacket that had seen better days. She sat down across from me, didn't order anything. You look like shit, I said. That's fair. We sat in silence. She was shaking, from anger or fear or exhaustion, maybe all three. Greg's gone, she said finally. He moved in with her, with Andrea. They're together now. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You wanted this. You sent those photos to destroy my marriage. I sent those photos to show you the truth. The truth? Is that what you think? What else am I supposed to think? She leaned forward. You've destroyed everything. David's life, my marriage, Dad's peace of mind. And for what? Because he hurt your feelings at Thanksgiving? You were there, I said quietly. You sat there and watched him tell me to leave. You said nothing. You did nothing. You let it happen. Because you deserved it. Did I? You were always the problem. Always the one causing drama. Always the one who couldn't get her life together. And now? Now you're worse. Now you're... She stopped, wiped her eyes. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. You just never bothered to look. That's bullshit. Is it? When's the last time you asked me how I was doing? When's the last time you invited me to something? When's the last time you treated me like family instead of an embarrassment? She didn't answer. I've been invisible to this family for years, I said. You didn't notice because it was convenient. Because if I was invisible, you could pretend I didn't exist. You could pretend the problems I represented weren't real. So you decided to burn everything down. I decided to stop being invisible. By destroying us? By showing you what you already were. I finished my coffee. David was embezzling from his own business. You were buying fake followers and lying about your life. Greg was cheating on you. Dad was living beyond his means and borrowing money he couldn't pay back. None of that is my fault. None of that is because of me. But you exposed it. You made it public. I held up a mirror, that's all. She stood up. I hope you're satisfied. I hope ruining our lives was worth whatever point you were trying to make. It wasn't about satisfaction. It was about truth. The truth? The truth is that you're alone. You've destroyed your family, and now you have nobody. I had nobody at that Thanksgiving table, I said. At least now it's honest. She left. I sat there for a while longer, finished my coffee, watched people come and go. My phone buzzed, a text from David. My turn, same place, tomorrow, I texted back. Okay. Because I wasn't done yet, not even close. Tomorrow, I'd face David, and then, when Claire sent me the files, I'd face my father one more time, and then this would be over. David looked worse than Jennifer. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung loose on him. His face was unshaven. He sat down across from me at the same Starbucks. Didn't say anything at first, just stared. You look terrible, I said. Yeah. His voice was hoarse. That's what happens when your life falls apart. I'm sorry you're going through this. Are you? About the consequences? No. About the pain? Maybe. He laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. You destroyed me. You know that, right? I lost everything. My company, my house, my wife, my kids, everything. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. Bullshit. You sent information to my partners. You exposed my debts. I sent them the truth. What you'd been doing was illegal, David. Embezzlement, fraud. You were stealing from your own company. I was borrowing. I was going to pay it back. Were you? He didn't answer. You were drowning, I said. You'd been drowning for years. You just refused to admit it. So you decided to push me under? I decided to stop pretending I didn't notice. He shook his head, rubbed his face. I'm living in a motel. Did Dad tell you? A $40 a night motel with stained carpets and broken air conditioning. That's where I'm sleeping now. That sounds difficult. Difficult? He looked at me, really looked at me. You did this. You planned this. You wanted me to suffer. I wanted you to face consequences. For what? For not defending you at Thanksgiving? For spending years treating me like I was worthless. For calling me pathetic. For standing by while Dad told me to leave. So this is revenge. This is accountability. There's no difference. There is. Revenge is about making someone suffer for hurting you. Accountability is about making someone face the truth of what they've done. Philosophy. He laughed again. You're going to philosophize at me while my life is in ruins. Your life is in ruins because you made bad choices, because you spent money you didn't have, because you stole from your own business, not because of me. You exposed it. Should I have kept quiet? Should I have let you keep stealing? Should I have protected you from your own decisions? I'm your brother. Are you? I leaned forward. Because brothers don't stand by while their sisters get thrown out of Thanksgiving dinner. Brothers don't call their sisters pathetic. Brothers don't treat their sisters like embarrassments. I was wrong. Is that what you want to hear? I was wrong. I was cruel. He stopped. But that doesn't justify this. That doesn't justify destroying my entire life. I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped covering for it. He stood up. I hope you're happy. I hope this was worth it. It wasn't about being happy. It was about being seen. Congratulations. We see you now. He walked toward the door, turned back. You know what the worst part is? I actually believed you were struggling. I believed you were broke. I believed you needed help. And all that time, you were rich. You were successful. You were just pretending to be pathetic so you could... What? Set us up? I was protecting myself. So when this day came, I'd be ready. For what? To destroy your own family? To show you who I really am. He left. I sat there alone, felt the weight of what I'd done settling around me. 2 down, 1 to go. My phone buzzed. An email from Claire, 3 attachments, each one labeled with my father's name. I opened the first one. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything Claire had promised. My father was in worse shape than I'd thought. His retirement account had less than $100,000. His house had a reverse mortgage with a balloon payment coming due in 6 months. He'd taken out personal loans to cover his property taxes. He owed money to 3 different credit cards. He was one emergency away from bankruptcy, and he'd been hiding it from everyone. I opened the second attachment. Email correspondence between my father and his financial advisor, discussing options, discussing whether he should ask David for money, discussing whether he should sell the house. The dates on the emails were all before Thanksgiving. He'd been panicking for months, and instead of asking for help, he'd lashed out at me. I opened the third attachment, a draft of his trust documents, the ones where he'd removed me as a beneficiary, but there was a note attached, from his lawyer, suggesting that he reconsider, that removing me might create legal complications, that it might look vindictive if anyone challenged the trust. My father had responded, I don't care. She's not part of this family anymore. I read that line 3 times, felt something hot and sharp in my chest. He'd meant it. Every word at Thanksgiving, every word on the phone, every word when he removed me from his trust. He genuinely believed I was worthless, that I was a disgrace, that I didn't deserve to be part of the family. I closed the attachments, sat there in the coffee shop, watched people live their normal lives. Then I made a decision. I called my father. He answered on the first ring. Meredith, we need to talk, in person. We already talked. Not about this. I paused. I have information about your finances, information you probably don't want me to have. Silence. Then, what kind of information? The kind that explains why you were so cruel at Thanksgiving. The kind that shows you were lashing out because you were scared. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do? Meet me tomorrow, your house, noon. I'm not noon, I repeated. Or I send this information to David and Jennifer, and they'll understand exactly why you've been so desperate to maintain control. He hung up, but I knew he'd be there. I spent the rest of the day preparing, making notes, planning what I'd say, how I'd say it. This was the final confrontation, the one I'd been building toward for 3 years, the moment when I'd face my father directly and make him understand what he'd done, not just at Thanksgiving, but for years before that. All the small cruelties, all the dismissals, all the moments when he'd made me feel small. Tomorrow, I'd make him feel small. Not through violence, not through screaming, but through truth. Through showing him exactly who he was and what he'd become. And then I'd walk away, and he'd have to live with it. I drove to his house the next day at 11:30, gave myself time to sit in the car and prepare, to center myself, to make sure I was calm. At noon exactly, I walked to the front door. It opened before I could knock. My father stood there. He looked older than he had 3 days ago, smaller somehow. Come in, he said. I followed him inside. The house felt different, quieter, like something had died in it. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd been told to leave on Thanksgiving, the same furniture, the same fake fireplace, the same family photos on the mantel that no longer included me. You said you have information, my father said. I do. I pulled out my phone, opened Claire's email. I know about your finances, about your reverse mortgage, about your debts, about how close you are to losing everything. His face went pale. How did you? The same way I knew about David's embezzlement, the same way I knew about Greg's affair, I paid attention. You hired someone. Does it matter how I got it? It matters that you're invading my privacy, that I'm holding you accountable, that I'm exposing the truth, like you did to me for years. He stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the street. Why? He asked finally. Why are you doing this? Because you told me I didn't belong, and I wanted you to understand what that actually means. So you decided to destroy me? I decided to show you that you're not who you think you are, that your judgments of me were based on nothing, that your cruelty was just fear dressed up as superiority. That's not... You called me weak, but you're the one drowning in debt. You called me pathetic, but you're the one hiding the truth from your own family. You told me I was an embarrassment, but you're the one who's been living a lie. He turned around. His eyes were wet. What do you want from me? Nothing. Then why are you here? To make sure you understand. I stood up. You threw me away. You told me I wasn't family anymore. You removed me from your trust. And you did it because you genuinely believed I was worthless. I was angry. You meant it. Every word. Don't pretend now that you didn't. He didn't deny it. So I want you to understand something, I said. I'm not worthless. I'm not weak. I'm not pathetic. I'm not any of the things you called me. I can see that now. Can you? Or are you just scared because I have information that could destroy you? He didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to leave, and you're never going to contact me again. You're not going to call. You're not going to text. You're not going to show up at my house. You're going to let me be exactly what you said I was, not part of this family. Meredith, and in return, I won't tell anyone about your finances. I won't expose your debts. I won't tell David and Jennifer that the reason you were so cruel at Thanksgiving was because you were scared about money. That's blackmail. That's consequence. I walked toward the door. You wanted me gone, so I'm gone. This is what that looks like. Wait, he followed me. Is this really it? Is this really how this ends? This ended at Thanksgiving. This is just me making it official. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for... I don't accept your apology. Why not? Because you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry I turned out to be successful. You're sorry you can't control me anymore. I opened the door. But you're not actually sorry for treating me like I was worthless, because you still think I was. I walked out, got in my car, drove away, and I didn't look back. I drove back to the beach house. 11 hours straight, no stops except for gas, no music, no distractions. Just the road and my thoughts and the growing certainty that this wasn't over yet. Because something was wrong. Something I couldn't name. Something that felt like unfinished business. I'd confronted them, all three of them. I'd shown them who I really was. I'd made them face consequences. I'd walked away. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like pause. I pulled into my garage at midnight, sat in the car for a long time, listened to the engine tick as it cooled, felt the exhaustion settle into my bones. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Ms. Blake. Claire's voice. We need to talk. It's midnight. I know. This couldn't wait. Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. What's wrong? I got a call tonight. From a lawyer representing your father. He's threatening to sue me for invasion of privacy. Says I obtained his financial information illegally. Did you? Everything I got was legal. Public records mostly. But he's threatening anyway. Trying to scare me into silence. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What did you tell him? But that's not why I'm calling. She paused. He asked me who hired me. I didn't tell him, but he's going to figure it out eventually. Let him figure it out. You don't understand. He's not just going after me. He's going after you. He filed a police report this afternoon, claiming harassment, claiming you've been stalking the family, claiming you sent threatening communications. That's not true. I know that. But he's building a case, getting evidence, talking to a prosecutor he knows. He can't prove anything. He doesn't have to prove anything. He just has to make your life difficult. Claire sighed. I'm telling you this because you need to be prepared. This isn't over. Not for him. She hung up. I sat in the dark garage, felt the exhaustion turn into something else, something harder. My father was fighting back. Not with truth, not with honesty. With lawyers and police reports and false accusations. He was doing exactly what I should have expected. Exactly what men like him always did when they felt threatened. He was trying to destroy me before I could destroy him. I went inside, poured a drink, stood on the deck, and watched the ocean. The smart thing would be to back off, to let the lawyers handle it, to maintain distance and let the system work. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling something else, something that had been building for 3 years, something that demanded resolution. I pulled out my phone, looked at my father's number, thought about calling him, thought about what I'd say. Then I deleted his number, because calling would be giving him what he wanted: engagement, a reaction, proof that his threats were working. Instead, I called Vincent. Meredith. His voice was groggy. It's 1 a.m. I need a favor. What kind of favor? The kind that requires discretion and no questions asked. He was quiet for a moment. How illegal are we talking? Not illegal, just aggressive. I'm listening. I told him about my father, about the police report, about the threats, about how he was trying to turn this around on me. So you want what? Vincent asked. You want me to scare him off? I want you to show him that threatening me was a mistake. How much of a mistake? Enough that he drops the police report. Enough that he backs off. Enough that he understands I'm not someone he can intimidate. And you want this done quietly. Very quietly. Vincent was quiet for a long time. This is going to cost you. Name your price. He did. I didn't hesitate. Done, I said. Give me 3 days. He hung up. I stood on the deck, watched the waves crash against the rocks. Felt something settle inside me. This was the line. The point where I stopped playing by rules my father had never followed. Where I stopped trying to be the bigger person. Where I accepted that some fights couldn't be won with patience and information. Some fights required force. 3 days later, Vincent called. It's done. What did you do? Better you don't know. He paused. But your father withdrew the police report this morning, told his lawyer to back off. He's not going to bother you again. How do you know? Because I made sure he understood the consequences if he did. Thank you. Don't thank me. His voice was serious. What I did for you, we're even now. You don't call me again for something like this. Understood? Understood. He hung up. I sat at my desk, stared at the ocean, felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. My phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer. Dad won't talk about what happened, but he's scared. What did you do? I didn't respond. Another text from David. Whatever's going on with Dad, leave him alone. He's an old man. This has gone far enough. I deleted it without reading it all the way through, because they were right. This had gone far enough. The point had been made. The consequences had been delivered. The truth had been exposed, but it still didn't feel finished. I spent the next week in isolation. Didn't leave the house, didn't answer calls, didn't check social media, just sat in my office and stared at the folders I'd built, at the documentation of 3 years of planning, at the evidence of everything I'd done. And I realized something. I'd won. I'd destroyed their comfortable lies. I'd exposed their weaknesses. I'd made them face consequences. But I'd also lost something. Some part of myself that I couldn't name, some capacity for mercy or forgiveness or whatever it was that let people move on from pain. I'd become exactly what they'd always feared I was, someone dangerous, someone willing to burn everything down rather than accept injustice. And I didn't know if that made me strong or broken. My phone rang. Unknown number again. I answered because I was tired of not answering. Ms. Blake? Yes. This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about a complaint we received. I felt my chest tighten. What kind of complaint? A harassment complaint, filed by your father. He withdrew it, but I'm following up anyway because some of the details were concerning. I haven't harassed anyone. That's not what he says. He says you've been stalking his family, sending threatening communications, interfering with their businesses and personal relationships. That's not true. Then you won't mind answering a few questions? I thought about hanging up, thought about calling a lawyer, thought about all the ways this could go wrong. I don't have anything to say without a lawyer present, I said. That's your right, but I'd like to meet with you, informally, just to get your side of the story. Why? Because your father's complaint mentioned some things that don't add up, and I like it when things add up. I thought about that. Tomorrow, noon, the coffee shop on Market Street. I'll be there. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, felt something crack inside me. This was it, the confrontation I'd been avoiding, not with my family, with the law, with the system, with the version of myself who'd thought she could operate outside consequences. Tomorrow, I'd have to explain myself to someone who had no reason to believe me, who had no investment in my story, who was just doing her job, and I'd have to do it without revealing how far I'd actually gone, without admitting what Vincent had done, without confessing to the line I'd crossed. I poured another drink, stood on the deck, watched the sun set over the ocean. Tomorrow would be the test, the moment when I'd find out if I was as smart as I thought I was, if I'd covered my tracks well enough, if I'd built my case carefully enough, or if everything I'd done for the past 3 years was about to come crashing down. Detective Morrison looked exactly like I expected. Mid-40s, short hair, no makeup, wearing clothes that were practical instead of fashionable. She sat across from me in the same Starbucks where I'd met Jennifer and David, ordered black coffee, pulled out a notebook. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "Do I need a lawyer?" "That depends. Have you done anything that requires a lawyer?" "No." "Then you're probably fine." She opened her notebook. "Tell me about your relationship with your family." "It's complicated. Most families are." I thought about where to start, how much to say, how much to hide. "My father told me to leave Thanksgiving dinner last month," I said. "We haven't been close since." "Why did he tell you to leave?" "Because he thinks I'm a failure. Because I embarrassed him." "Did you?" "Probably. I showed up in old clothes and brought a store-bought pie. In my family, that's grounds for exile." Morrison wrote something down. "Your father says you've been harassing his family since then, sending emails, making phone calls, interfering with their businesses. That's not accurate." "What is accurate?" I chose my words carefully. "I've been living my life. I sold my company. I bought a house. I've been focusing on myself instead of trying to fit into a family that doesn't want me." "Your father says you sent information to your brother's business partners that destroyed his company." I don't know what information he's referring to. Financial records, evidence of embezzlement. If someone sent that information, they did your brother a favor. Embezzlement is illegal. Morrison studied me. "You're not denying you sent it." "I'm saying I don't know what information was sent or by whom. My brother's business dealings are not my responsibility." "What about your sister? Your father says you sent photos of her husband cheating." "If someone sent those photos, they did her a favor too. She deserved to know the truth." "You're good at deflecting." "I'm good at not admitting to things I didn't do." Morrison closed her notebook. "Here's what I think. I think your family treated you badly. I think you got tired of it, and I think you decided to fight back. None of that is illegal, morally questionable maybe, but not illegal." "Then why are we having this conversation?" "Because your father withdrew his complaint very suddenly. And when I asked him why, he got nervous, like something scared him." I kept my face neutral. "Maybe he realized his complaint was baseless." "Maybe." Morrison leaned forward. "Or maybe someone convinced him to drop it. Someone who doesn't like things being poked into." I wouldn't know anything about that. Wouldn't you? We stared at each other. I refused to blink first. "Ms. Blake, I'm going to be honest with you," Morrison said. "I don't like bullies. And from what I can tell, your family bullied you for years. If you found creative ways to push back, I'm not particularly interested in pursuing it. But," she paused, "if you crossed a line, if you did something that goes beyond just exposing truths, that's different." "I didn't cross any lines." "Did someone cross one for you?" "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." Morrison stood up. "Here's my card. If you think of anything I should know, call me. Otherwise, I'm closing this case. Your father withdrew his complaint, and I don't have evidence of any actual crime." She left. I sat there for a long time, stared at the business card she'd left on the table. I'd dodged something, some consequence that had been coming for me, but I'd dodged it narrowly, and Morrison knew it. She knew I was hiding something. She just couldn't prove it. I drove back to the beach house, pulled into the garage, sat in the car. This was supposed to be over. This was supposed to be the end, but it kept going, kept echoing, kept demanding more from me. My phone buzzed. An email from Vincent. "Don't contact me again. We're done." That was it. No explanation. No details. Just those 7 words. I understood. Whatever he'd done to my father had crossed some line for him, some boundary he'd promised himself he wouldn't cross again, and now he was cutting ties before I could drag him further. I didn't blame him. I'd do the same thing if I were him. I went inside, poured a drink I didn't want, stood on the deck and watched the ocean. The sun was setting. The sky was turning orange and purple. The waves were calm. Everything was supposed to be peaceful now. I'd won. I'd gotten revenge. I'd shown them who I really was. So why did I feel so empty? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, found Emma's number. My daughter. The one person I'd protected from all of this. The one person who still saw me as something other than a weapon. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Mom? Hey, sweetheart. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. I know. I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some family stuff. What kind of stuff? Just old wounds, old problems, nothing you need to worry about. Grandpa called me, she said. He sounded weird, upset. He said something about you being in trouble. I closed my eyes. I'm not in trouble. Are you sure? Because he made it sound like... I'm sure. Your grandfather and I had a disagreement. It's handled now. What kind of disagreement? The kind that doesn't matter anymore. I changed the subject. How's school? We talked for 20 minutes. About her classes, her friends, her plans for winter break, normal things, safe things, things that had nothing to do with revenge or family or consequences. When we hung up, I felt worse, because Emma still saw me as her mother, still trusted me, still believed I was someone worth loving, and I wasn't sure that was true anymore. I went to bed early, lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling, listened to the ocean through the open window. Tomorrow, I'd have to decide what came next. Whether I'd let this be over, or whether I'd keep pushing, whether I'd accept the hollow victory I'd won, or whether I'd demand something more. But tonight, I'd just lie here and feel the weight of everything I'd done, and wonder if any of it had been worth it. I woke up at dawn to someone pounding on my door, not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. I grabbed my phone, checked the security camera app, saw my father standing on my porch. He looked wild, disheveled, desperate. I considered not answering, considered calling the police, considered a lot of things. Then I opened the door. How did you find this place? I asked. I hired someone, just like you did. His voice was hoarse. We need to talk. I thought we were done talking. I thought so too. Then I got a call last night. He pushed past me into the house. From my financial advisor. Seems someone's been asking questions about my accounts. Someone claiming to represent the IRS. I closed the door. I don't know anything about that. Bullshit. He spun around. This is you. This is what you do. You dig and dig until you find something you can use against me. If the IRS is investigating you, that's not my problem. There's no investigation. It was someone pretending to be from the IRS, trying to scare me, trying to get me to reveal information. I said nothing, because I actually didn't know anything about this, hadn't ordered it, hadn't planned it, which meant someone else was involved, someone I hadn't accounted for. You need to stop, my father said. Whatever vendetta you think you're pursuing, whatever point you think you're making, you need to stop before this goes too far. It already went too far, at Thanksgiving, when you told me to leave. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You meant them. Maybe I did. But that doesn't justify this. That doesn't justify destroying everything. I didn't destroy everything. I just stopped protecting it. That's the same thing. Is it? I walked to the window, looked out at the ocean. You spent years making me feel worthless, making me feel like I didn't belong, making me feel like everything I did was wrong. I was trying to motivate you. You were trying to control me, and when I wouldn't be controlled, you threw me away. You removed me from your trust. You told me I wasn't part of the family. You made it official that I meant nothing to you. I turned to face him. So I decided to show you what nothing looks like. By destroying David's career, by destroying Jennifer's marriage, by exposing the truth. That's all I did. I didn't create David's debts. I didn't make Greg cheat. I didn't force you to live beyond your means. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. You're destroying this family. I'm showing you what this family really is, without the lies, without the pretending, without the performance. He stared at me. When did you become so cruel? Around the time you called me pathetic in front of everyone I loved. He sat down heavily in one of my chairs, put his head in his hands. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it. There has to be a way. We're family. We're not family. You made that clear. I was wrong. Were you? I sat down across from him. Or are you just scared because your comfortable lies are falling apart? Both. Maybe both. He looked up. But that doesn't mean we can't. Can't what? Go back to how things were? Pretend this never happened? Sit around another Thanksgiving table and smile while you judge me? We could try. Why? So you can throw me out again when I disappoint you? I wouldn't. You would, because that's who you are. That's who you've always been. A man who demands perfection and punishes anything less. That's not fair. Neither was Thanksgiving. We sat in silence. The ocean crashed outside. The sun was rising, painting the room in orange light. I'm sorry, my father said finally. For Thanksgiving, for everything. For being a shitty father who valued appearances over truth. I don't accept your apology. Why not? Because you're only sorry now that you've lost. You're only apologizing because I turned out to be successful. Because I have money and power and the ability to hurt you back. That's not... If I was actually broke, if I was actually struggling, would you be here apologizing? He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Get out, I said. Meredith, get out of my house, get out of my life, get out of my head. Please, just listen. I listened for 45 years. I listened while you criticized me. I listened while you compared me to David. I listened while you made me feel small. I'm done listening. Then what? What happens now? Now you leave. You go back to your life. You deal with your debts. You face your consequences, and you never contact me again. I'm your father. You stopped being my father when you told me I didn't belong. He stood up slowly, looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, or maybe the last time. I hope you find peace, he said. I hope you find truth. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother, who'd died when I was 23, who'd never met Emma, who'd loved me unconditionally in a way my father never had. My mother would understand, I said quietly, because she knew what it was like to be invisible to you. His face went pale. That's not... She told me, before she died. She told me you only saw her as an accessory, as something that made you look good. She told me she spent years trying to be enough for you, and it was never enough. That's a lie. Is it? Or is it just another truth you've been avoiding? He left without another word, slammed the door behind him. I heard his car start, heard him drive away. I sat in the chair for a long time, watched the sun climb higher, felt something break loose inside me. That was it. The final confrontation, the last conversation we'd ever have, and I'd meant every word. But I still felt empty, still felt like something was missing, like I'd won the battle but lost something I couldn't name. My phone buzzed, a text from Detective Morrison. Your father called me this morning, wants to file a new complaint. I told him I wasn't interested unless he had actual evidence. Thought you should know. I read it twice, then typed a response. Thank you. She responded immediately. For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I stared at that message. What makes you think I'm looking for something? Because revenge is never the goal. It's just what people do when they don't know what else to do with their pain. I didn't respond, put the phone down, walked out onto the deck. She was right. Revenge had never been the goal. It was just the weapon I'd chosen because I didn't know how else to process what had been done to me. But now the weapon was spent. The revenge was complete, and I was left with the same pain I'd started with. Only now it had company. Guilt, loneliness, the knowledge that I'd destroyed relationships that could never be rebuilt. I thought about Emma, about what she'd think if she knew everything I'd done, about whether she'd still love me, still see me as her mother. I thought about my mother, about what she'd actually think of what I'd become, about whether she'd be proud or horrified or somewhere in between. I thought about the version of me that had walked into that Thanksgiving dinner, the one who'd still believed family meant something, who'd still thought love could overcome cruelty. That version was gone. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Blake, this is Claire. I'm calling to let you know I'm closing your file. I've given you everything you asked for. I won't be doing any more work for you. Why not? Because what you're doing isn't investigation anymore. It's vendetta, and I don't participate in those. I paid you. You did, and I fulfilled the contract. But I'm out now. Don't contact me again. She hung up. I stood there holding the phone. Everyone was leaving. Vincent, Claire, my family, all the people I'd used or pushed or pulled into my orbit were stepping back, drawing boundaries, protecting themselves from whatever I'd become. And I couldn't blame them, because I wasn't sure I'd want to be around me either. I went back inside, looked at my office, at the files and folders and documentation of 3 years of planning, at the evidence of everything I'd accomplished, and I realized something. I'd won. I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. I'd destroyed their comfortable lies. I'd exposed their weaknesses. I'd made them face consequences. But in the process, I'd destroyed something else, some part of myself that I'd never get back, some capacity for connection or forgiveness or whatever it was that let people be more than their pain. I grabbed the folders, all of them, walked out onto the deck, stood at the railing, then I threw them into the ocean. One by one, watched them flutter down to the rocks. Watched the waves claim them. Evidence of everything I'd done, everything I'd planned, everything I'd become. Gone. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't need it anymore. Because keeping it meant living in the past, meant staying trapped in the pain that had created it. The last folder hit the water. I watched it sink, felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, no peace. Just the cold certainty that this was over. Finally, completely, irrevocably. I'd shown them who I was. I'd made them face consequences. I'd walked away. And now I had to figure out what came next. Who I would become in the space after revenge. Whether there was a version of me that could exist without anger as fuel. I didn't know the answer to that. But I was standing in a $3 million house overlooking the ocean with $20 million in the bank and no one to share it with. So maybe the answer didn't matter. Maybe I'd already gotten exactly what I deserved.